Hi, in this how-to video I am going to show you how to create a fabric face mask that has a pocket that if you want to add a filter to it you may. It also has a metal nose piece which helps the mask fit your face better, and also if you're someone who wears glasses, this will help them your glasses not to fog up as badly. So before we get started, I want you to know that this particular pattern I am using, I have adapted from Leah Day. She has a website that has a pocket mask tutorial. She also has a video on YouTube if you need some more information. So let me give you the supply list of things that you'll need to create this fabric mask. First thing you will need is a piece of fabric that is 9 by 15 inches. You will also need a 6-inch piece of pipe cleaner or some type of metal that is bendable. This is for the nose piece. You will also need a marking pencil. If you don't have a marking pencil, you can use a washable marker, or you can also use chalk if you're using a dark fabric. You need straight pins, which will help hold the pleats together when we are making our mask. You need scissors. You need a ruler. This helps us measure our pleats so that we have straight pleats. You also need some type of tie. You will need 4 20-inch pieces for the mask. I've used ribbon, I've used shoelaces, just something that you can use to secure the mask to your face will work. Nothing too thin, because when you go to sew it into the mask, sometimes if it's too thin, it won't secure very well. You also can have a 5 by 5 piece of flannel, and this can be for your filter later. At the end of the video, I will tell you the different materials that have been recommended for filter options. Okay, so let's get started. First thing we're going to do is take our fabric and we're going to fold it in half so that the right sides are together. The right sides of a fabric is the pretty side, so those will match up. And as you can see over here, my fabric's off just by a little bit. That doesn't really matter. Okay, in the long run, it's not going to matter. So the first thing we're going to sew is the pocket. Okay, so what you're going to do is mark 3 inches in from each side. So you'll make a mark at the 3-inch and at the 6-inch. What we're going to do is sew along here with a 1/2-inch seam allowance all the way up until our mark. We'll break the thread and then we'll start here and sew all the way to this edge, and that will create the opening for our pocket. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is allow about a 1/2-inch to 3/4 seam allowance from the edge of the fabric. I'm going to backstitch a few stitches. Then I will sew along this edge here up until my first mark. Do a few more back stitches. Back stitches help secure your thread so it won't pull out later. Okay, now I'm going to come to my 6-inch mark. Do a few back stitches here and sew to the edge of the fabric. A few more back stitches, and we have our first set of stitches in. Now that we've sewed our pocket, we are going to open that seam up, and I like to have the pocket a little lower in the mask instead of right at the very top. So I just kind of use the seam, the open seam as a guide, and I try to line it up at the top. Okay, just kind of press this open. The next thing we are going to do is put our ribbon in. So whatever you've chosen to use for the ties, we're going to tack them into place and then sew them. So you're going to have one at each corner. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is just take all of my 4 ties and feed them through the middle like so. Okay, this makes it a little easier when you are trying to secure the ribbon or the tie. Okay, so the first one I'm going to do up here in the upper corner. And I leave it hanging out just a little bit like that, okay? Helps you be able to see where it is when you're sewing. I just stick it down with a piece of ribbon, with a pen. And I'll go down here. I just like to smooth everything down. Okay, again, I let it stick out just a little bit so it's easier to see. I tack it with a straight pin. Okay, now we'll do the other side. Okay. If you've already tacked the ribbon down, you can use the pocket opening to pull the ribbon through so that you don't accidentally sew it in the wrong spot. Okay. So, we will take this next one, it's out just a little bit, tack it into place with a straight pin. Okay, and then we have the last one at the bottom. Make sure that the fabric is flat. If you discover that it's not a big deal. It will still work just fine. Okay, so I like to now reach in and pull out all the other ties so they don't get sewn in the wrong spots. Okay, so now I have the 4 ties out at the top, and I'm going to be sewing along this line here and sewing along this side here. I'll do some back stitching to make sure that these ribbons are secured very well. Okay. So again, about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I just go back and forth a couple of times, do a couple back stitches to make sure that it's secure. Do a couple back and forths to make sure it's nice and secure. And as you see, I'm using black thread so that you can see it better. Feel free to match your thread to the color of your fabric. Not necessary, but some people like for things to match. Okay, so I'm going to sew along this edge here. Now we're at the top, so we're going to do some back stitching just to make sure that that ribbon is nicely secured. Okay, cut our thread and come to this other side. Again, just make sure that your ties are nowhere near the needle because you don't want to accidentally sew them in the wrong spot. Okay, so do a few back stitches to secure the ribbon up here again. Just a few back and forwards. That just helps tack it down a little better so that it won't pull out once we turn the mask right side out. Okay. Now we're at our final piece of ribbon, back and forth again, just to secure it into place. Okay. Next thing we need to do, it's not absolutely critical, but it does make for a nicer finished product, is to trim the corners a little bit. So I make sure that I'm nowhere near my stitches here, okay? But I do come in and just trim this a little bit, just like that. So I do it for all the corners, just like this. You can see, just being very careful not to get those stitches. Now what we're going to do is we are going to turn our mask right side out. So through the pocket opening, I'm going to turn our mask. You can use the ties to gently pull on the edges to have the corners come out. Okay. All right. Now you can see that the pocket is here. So this is the top of our mask. Okay, so I just like to use my fingers to press everything out. Now what we're going to do is mark for our pleats. So you take your ruler, and your mask should now be about 7 inches. Mine's a little bit short of 7 inches, but that's okay. So we are going to take our marking pen. We're going to make 1-inch marks. So all the way down here from 7, we'll mark at 6 inches, 5 inches, 4 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, and 1 inch. Okay, we'll do it for both sides. And these are where your pleats are going to be. Okay, you need to make sure that the side of the fabric is the back side where the pocket is. Okay, that's where we're going to be folding our pleats from. So now that we have measured our pleats, we'll start at the bottom and we'll take the first 2 markings and we're going to take the 7-inch marks all the way up to the 6-inch marks. Okay, then you'll take straight pins and you'll secure them into place. And you'll do this for all of your pleats. I'm going to finish mine, and then we'll come back and talk about how to finish sewing your mask. Okay, as you can see, I have now done all my pleats. And since this is the back of my mask, because of the pocket, I'm going to flip it over just to make sure it looks like it's even. And see here, I've when I secured that particular pleat, just kind of got a little wonky. So I like to just make sure that it looks fairly even though we've measured. Just every once in a while, the pleats just don't look right. So that looks pretty good to me. Okay, now what we're going to do is insert the wire nose piece. So you want to try to keep your metal as straight as possible, and you just open up the pocket here and you slide it in. Okay, and then you do it on the other side as well. You slide it in. Then this is not a measured thing. You just kind of try to pull it towards the top, as far up towards the top as you can. And then as you can see, my pipe cleaner is really far over on this side and I have a lot of space, so I'm going to scoot it over a little bit, and I do that until it feels fairly even to me. So this feels fairly even. It's not going to matter in the long run if it's not perfect. So I secure this at the top, and it's very important when you're sewing that you don't want your sewing machine needle to hit the pipe cleaner because it could break it. Could break your needle, and if you don't have another one, then you're not going to be able to finish your mask. Okay, now that we have everything pinned together, I'm going to start down in this corner and I'm going to sew up. I'm going to sew along this edge here to secure the pipe cleaner, and then I'm going to sew down this side here to secure these pleats. Okay. I like to use on my edges a zigzag pleat. I feel like it holds everything in a little bit better. And then along the top, I like to use just a straight stitch because I think it looks a little cleaner. Again, make sure that your ties are not in the way. Okay, so again, we're going to do some back stitching to secure our thread into place. Okay. And I just like to hold my pleats, check them every once in a while to make sure that they really are still flat. Okay, so I've sewed along the first edge here, and I'm almost to the top. Okay, I'm just going to lift my presser foot, rotate my mask, put my presser foot back down, and switch my thread over. Okay. Now I'm going to be sewing along this edge here, trying my very best to push the pipe cleaner as close to the edge as possible, and making sure I don't hit it with my needle. Along the way, you can pull out your straight pins. If you have pinned it in a way that they're out of the way, no need to do so until later. It's very important not to hit those either because they can also break your sewing machine needle. Okay. Okay, now we're going to sew along the last edge. To finish securing the pleats, make sure that your ties are out of the way so that they don't get sewn in at the wrong spot. My needle could go a lot faster, but I have found that when you have a lot of thickness due to the pleats that my sewing machine likes to go a little slower. It makes for nicer stitches. I did a back stitch here to secure the thread. It is cut, and we now have a mask. I do like to go back along both edges where the pleats are to do a second set of stitches just to secure the pleats, because this is where a lot of tension is put on the fabric, so this helps make sure it holds up and it doesn't fall apart in the wash. Okay, I'm going to do some back stitches and then go right along the edge here to make sure that it's securing my pleats. Okay. And I'll do the same for the other side. Okay. Again, back stitch. Okay. So our mask is done. So as you can see, we have our stitches along the edge. Our nose piece is in place up here at the top, so you can bend it to fit around your nose. And then in the back is a spot for your filter. Okay? Sometimes when you're using ribbon, the ribbon starts to fray at the edges, and what I like to do is just fold it over and tack it into place by hand or with a sewing machine if that starts to happen. And there you go. That is how you can make your own mask with a pocket for filter options. Okay, so I hope that my tutorial was helpful. One thing that I noticed after I recorded the sewing part was that when you're doing your pleats, you are going to be taking up and meeting pleats as pairs. So the 6-inch comes up and meets the 5-inch, the 4-inch comes up and meets the 3-inch, and then the 2-inch comes up and meets the 1-inch on both sides. Okay, and then you have your opening here for your filter if you would like to use one, and that faces towards your nose. Things that I have read that work well for filters include paper towels, coffee filters. I like to use flannel. I've heard that that one is a fairly good one. Now, these aren't as good and protective as surgical masks or the N95 masks, but it will reduce the potential spread of the virus if you wear these out in public. So, do some reading on different filter options. How you put the filter in is you are going to open your mask up like this, and then you tuck the filter in and try to lay it flat so that when you have your mask on, that the filter is around this area here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Something that I would like to say about masks is that if you've never worn one before, it takes a little getting used to. I promise you that you're able to breathe and you're getting enough oxygen through the mask. But it doesn't feel like it all the time. Sometimes you feel like you're suffocating. So play around with the different filter options, because some filters, even though they might be a better choice, if you feel like you're suffocating from having so many layers that you're breathing through, then you might need to work up to that one. So hopefully this was helpful, and stay healthy.